Welcome down to my 9-foot homemade oak bar. Pour yourself a cold one. You are listening to Bucs in the Basement. My name's Chris, and Craig here is the biggest Pirates fan you'll ever meet. Let's talk Pirates baseball now. Welcome to Bucs in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
We had to turn the microphones on because Craig and I talked for like a half hour before we got the show started. We're sitting there. We were basically having the show without hitting record because there's just so much that you can cover this week with the Pirates, and then looking at, like, you know, who's shaking loose. I think that's the most interesting thing, like, of the first 4 or 5 days after the World Series is who shakes loose. Who did you think was going to shake loose that doesn't shake loose? Like, I was surprised that Polanco from Minnesota, they picked up his option. That was expensive, you know? But they were like, no, we're going to keep him around. Even though he didn't play, an awful lot of time, that's a heck of a middle infielder that was going to be coming available. And I really thought, with a very weak, market for middle infielders, he was going to go out and clean up. And maybe that's why Minnesota picked him up. Toronto didn't pick up Whit Merrifield, but they picked up Polanco. So, I mean, and you see all these pitchers. Pitching is so deep this year, man. Like, the Pirates need pitching. There's lots of it out there. And you don't need to be the big spender, although it'd be nice for them to start increasing this payroll right now, right? Like, you've got a lot of young talent. It'd be nice if you went out and you signed somebody to a big money deal for 4 or 5 years and said, this guy's going to be up at the top of my rotation.
Yeah, and everybody's talking about how they should be, shopping in a different aisle, and I would agree with that completely. You're not going to go up into the high end, organic section where everything is priced up, realistically out of the Pirates range. But you could at least stop going to, to a degree, the dollar items that you see as soon as you walk in. And they've been successful with it. Rich Hill gave them more innings that we could have ever expected. Jose Quintana had a great year. Tyler Anderson had a great year. But those were all 1-year deals. And you kind of, at some point in time, have to move beyond that if you want to be competitive, if you want to, move towards that winning. Right after the season was over, in an episode, we talked about Ben Cherington wanting to move from, that 76 wins to, they talked about, 84 or more wins, because that would be what would get you into the playoffs. In a way, it's kind of not easy to make up those 16 wins, that they had from, or 14 wins or whatever it be, from the 1 year to the next. It's once you start getting into the point where you are, pushing towards that 500, pushing over that, sometimes those wins are a little bit harder to come by. I think that, because especially you don't know what the Cubs are going to do now, that they go out and pay what the Pirates, more than what the Pirates would ever pay for a free agent to bring in a manager. You don't know what the Cardinals are going to do to build back quickly. You don't know what the Brewers are going to do now. You don't know.
Well, I know what the Cubs are going to do. The Cubs are going to go try to win. You don't give Craig Counsell. You don't give Craig Counsell $8 million a year for 5 years and reset the way that Major League Baseball managers are paid. And that was something that Counsell, I guess, had told people that he wanted in his next deal, to completely raise the bar for Major League Baseball managers. I saw some list where MLB managers were rated below hockey's highest paid, the NFL, of course, the NBA, of course, and both college basketball's highest paid and college football's highest paid. And now he ranks in there with college football, college basketball, essentially, right in that range, and above NHL's highest paid head coach. So, he really reset the entire thing. For the Cubs to go do that, That's because they intend to be competing in this division. So look, the Pirates have a lot going on for them, Craig. And they are coming out of a rebuild, but what they have going for them that is most important is payroll flexibility. And at some point, you cannot be the lowest payroll in Major League Baseball. All right? You just cannot be it. $68 million is not winning you the National League Central. I don't care how good of a general manager Ben Cherington is. I don't care how many prospects work out for you. I don't care how the ball bounces and how much luck is involved. You are not winning anything. You're not winning the division, and you're not going to get in there and go deep into the postseason with a $68 million payroll. And so there has to be an increase in it. So when I hear you say things like, well, you can't shop in this aisle, I go, okay, you can't shop in that aisle for every position, but you should be able to shop in that aisle if there's something you really, really want. Currently, right now, according to Spot Track for 2024, the Pirates are only on the hook. Total salary, just a hair over $17 million. And when you look at their estimated arbitration and pre-arbitration salaries that they're going to have to pick up, at this current time, $44.5 million. That's it. That's what you have right now with the team in your possession. $44 million. This is crazy. You're already $24 million less than what you spent last year. So you have $24 million just to get to what you had last year that you can go out and spend right now in free agency. And if you really are serious, it's time to elevate the payroll to a $100 million payroll. Okay? It's time to elevate the payroll at least into the low 90s. It's time to start adding money. So yeah, if you believe that Aaron Nola is a guy that you want to see at the top of your rotation for the next 4 or 5 years, you can go shop in the other aisle for your other needs, but you should be able to pick him up and give him a massive salary, even if he accounts for a fourth of your entire team's salary or a fifth of your entire team's salary, because you're going to need one or two pieces that you're going to have to pay money for. The idea of being frugal and cheap and staying within Bob Nutting's range, I understand that. I've always said general manager needs to understand the limitations of his owner. Okay, I could be angry about the fact that Bob Nutting is cheap, just like everybody else. Ben Cherington needs to understand what the limits are, but he needs to know right now going into the offseason what this guy can actually spend. And then he's got to sit there and say to himself, okay, I can go shop over here in the bargain area here, and there's a couple of dented cans that I think still have good food inside of them, but I'm walking down the organic aisle and I'm getting myself an ace. Or I'm walking down the organic aisle and I'm getting myself a legit power-hitting first baseman. Even if I'm converting somebody from, say, third base over to first, or I'm doing something, or I'm making some sort of a trade with my prospects and I'm bringing on somebody that has a higher contract. Because he can add payroll right now if the Pirates are interested in winning. I accept the $60-some million payroll that they dealt with last year when it's in a non-competitive year. I don't accept that this year. And I don't think any Pirates fan should accept that this year, because this is a year where they should be competing. This is a year where they should make the playoffs. Even if they miss the division, they should slide into one of those wild card spots, which we all just watched. Teams in wild card spots go on deep into the postseason, and one of them won the World Series. So, that's what you need to get to at this point. $60-some million isn't going to cut it. It's time to be competitive. If you are, you can shop, I believe, in that organic section for at least one or two pieces. You just better be sure that piece is going to work out. You got to be super confident because you can't buy too many of them.
I can't disagree there, Chris. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm a Pirates fan, dude. I set myself up. I set my expectations a little bit lower so that, maybe if they would do something like that, I could be overly excited. I mean, you've been beaten down into the idea that you can't afford players. And the thing is that you can afford players. There's so much revenue sharing in Major League Baseball, and this owner has spent so little over the last couple of years. You cannot tell me that he can't afford to go into the organic aisle. He can't go afford a couple of pieces, and he can't afford to raise this payroll up near $100 million.
which would still have him in the bottom half of Major League Baseball. But that's what he's going to have to do to go be competitive. Because, we always compare him to the Rays, right? We always compare the Pirates to the Rays. Like, they got to do things like what the Rays do. And they got to live like the Rays. Well, hold on a second. Let's be a little honest about that, okay? Tampa Bay is a ghost town. Their stadium is terrible. They don't get in any kind of fans, and they get very minimal support out there from their fan base. They have to be that way because they don't have the fan base to do it. Pittsburgh has the fan base. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, that place will be sold out all the time. Okay? You have the ability to raise your payroll up. You have a vibrant city and metropolitan area. This is a bigger place with a more rabid fan base than Kansas City. This is a place that has a more rabid fan base than Oakland, even though they're all out there chanting sell the team. This guy here was rated. I'm going to tell you right now, I will never forget it. Forbes put out the worth of every owner in Major League Baseball, and he was right next to Jerry Reinsdorf of the Chicago White Sox, who in a losing season went out and spent $162 million this past year. So don't tell me Bob Nutting has nothing. I won't accept that anymore. I accepted this when this team was building. I will not accept bottom 5 payroll in baseball when this team is ready to go win. That's unacceptable.
I think they definitely do need to spend more. It definitely needs to go up. I mean, my only contradiction to that, or maybe argument or rebuttal or whatever it would be to that, would be if we go out and get a DeGrom and then he's injured. And I don't think we can backfill in the same way, the Rangers could do. They have, more money. They've shown they can spend more money. They've shown they're willing to spend more money. I guess I'm living within those constraints. I mean, if we could get a Nola, if we could get, Jordan Montgomery, who's kind of priced himself up there at that point in time to get one.
Yeah, but
I don't think
he's as good as Nola. See, what I'm saying is if you're going to go spend the money, get the guy that you believe in, right? You're right. Injury could hurt you. So maybe the smart move is spend the money, but spend it on a lot of depth, right? Then I would understand it. If your thing is we need 2 starting pitchers, well then go, and we're only going to get 2 starting pitchers, then go spend money on one of them that's really, really good and fill in the other one, with somebody that's lower down in a different aisle. You know what I'm saying? But if you're going to sit there and say, well, we want to have depth and we want to be able to deal with any kind of injury, then I could understand saying, okay, fine, but then you're adding 4 of them. I'm saying, though, you still got to spend the money. Money's got to be spent at this point. All right? You cannot go back into the season this year and say, well, we're just going to let the kids play and see what happens. Okay? You're so deep at pitching right now in Major League free agency. So deep in pitching. You either go and swing for the fences and get a big-time ace up at the top and fill in the backfill and go out there and compete this year, or you go out and you get so much depth that you're walking in with 6 legit starting pitchers, and one's going to be in your bullpen just in case something goes wrong. But you have so much room payroll-wise in what this man, I believe, can afford, and I won't buy it has to be in the bottom 5 of Major League Baseball anymore, that you should be able to now fill in and get that pitching that you need, right? And figure out what you're doing over at first base and solidify something in the outfield if you feel like you need to add a piece out there, okay? Because now is the time. And this is, I'm telling you right now, you see free agent classes sometimes that are deep, and then you see them when they are thin. Look at middle infield right now. It's thin. If you didn't have O'Neal Cruz, you'd be scratching your head right now as to what you were going to do. You need pitching, and it is deep this year. There's no guarantee it's deep in future years. It's time to go shopping.
If you ever see me out and about in Pittsburgh, you will always recognize me, and not just because of the white beard, but also because of the Y that is always on top of my head, the hat I always wear. The Yins brand, proud partners with Bucs in the Basement. 3 dynasties, 1 brand, Yins. Finally, 1 brand to rep all black and gold. Follow at Shop Yins for new merch drops and giveaways. Order online at www.shopyins, the emphasis on the 2 Z's, high quality comfort, lightweight materials, a new modern look for the black and gold, made for Yins by a Yinzer. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, I have always said too, just because, I mean, you look at like Mitch Keller, Johan Oviedo, and then usually, a mix of hopefully if Roansy Contreras bounces back, Luis Ortiz, Quinn Priester, all those guys is like a 5. But if you want to have them force themselves into the rotation, then I wouldn't be opposed to say, hey, go out and get 3 or 4 starting pitchers. To me, I feel like for the Pirates, it's just more depth and more options at different places. If they want to go out and get you said there's not a lot at second base, but if they would want to possibly trade for a second baseman, pick up one of the little pieces that may be there, I'm not opposed to that whatsoever either. I mean, you've got Nick Gonzalez, Leo Piguero, Jared Triolo all fighting for that spot, but none of them that have really solidified themselves as an answer.
One of them might get traded. One of them might actually be, because other teams are looking for middle infield. If you can make the decision of which one you want to keep and there's value to another team, one of them might get moved on from so that you can bring back a piece as well. But I only see with Keller and the rest of this staff, like, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh, but let's say I see a 2, maybe a 4, and a bunch of 5s or guys that are depth pieces right now in your rotation. You need to add to your pitching staff.
And it's clear. It's clear that needs to happen. I mean, there's something that needs to be done. But like I said, I think before we hopped on the show here, I think that people get into the thing of, somebody will be blocked, like a Paul Skeens or a Jared Jones would be blocked in the rotation if you bring in, more than those 2 guys. I don't believe in that. Like, I would think that if that guy is good enough and makes himself a part of that. I mean, you brought up Brandon Pfaadt for Arizona, who ended up being, a pretty big piece in the rotation for them, especially in the playoffs towards the end of the season, didn't make the opening day rotation because they had built depth and they made him force himself on.
Both of the teams in the World Series were like that, right? I mean, the Rangers, like they lost DeGrom. Scherzer was injured for a good portion of the year. Even they didn't even have him at the beginning. Then they brought him in, and then it was like he's okay, he's not okay because he's old, and he really, he's surviving. He's right here at the end of his career, making a ridiculous amount of money. They had other injuries as well throughout the season to their pitching staff. They had all kinds of problems, and they had built depth. And you look at what was going on in Arizona. Pfaadt was not like he didn't win the job, but look at what a big piece that he was. The Pirates don't have that right now. I mean, like right now, the Pirates, they don't have that kind of depth that's on their pitching staff. They don't even have enough to really field, in my opinion, 5 legit starting pitchers for next year. Okay? And what I'm saying is if you're like, well, this guy could work out, or this guy could bring it back, or this guy could take the next step, that's great. Those guys are the guys that should be fighting to get on the roster. They shouldn't have a set spot. If you're really going to compete, they shouldn't have a set spot.
Yeah. And if you have, you're talking about one of the places that, at some point in time, I think we thought, or at least it was kind of, sold to us, or maybe just from what they showed, is we thought that maybe we wouldn't need, more depth in the outfield. Because, if you look back about 2 years, we were thinking to ourselves, okay, we have Jack Sawinski, we have Brian Reynolds, we have Cal Mitchell, we have Kanan Smith and Jigba, we have Travis Swaggerty. We have all these guys, and we started listing just like a bunch of names. Well, at this point in time, it's Brian Reynolds, and because of his power, and if he can take another step forward, obviously, Jack Sawinski. But beyond that, you have Joshua Palacios, you have Connor Joe, who's a part-time player. So if you can upgrade there, do that as well. And the point that I was getting to at second base was that, we had talked ourselves into, coming into this season that Rodolfo Castro may have been an answer because he was, over a 2-WAR player during the previous season. And we see him come into this year and fall apart. I mean, you can't really, I don't think, I mean, you can let it be like an open competition between a few of those guys, but I mean, wouldn't be a bad idea to have a guy who is an actual major leaguer and has proven it and done it in that position and have those guys fight to be over top of him. I mean, that's where I'm getting down to this is Chris, is that I mean, you try to make up the 40-man roster and you try to make up that 26-man roster. And a lot of times it's been like, where are holes? Where is there not a ton of depth? And we can like kind of plug those places, for right now. I think that you've kind of got to the point where it's just like, okay, these guys are starting to show us who they are, like in a Jack Sawinski. I mean, he's still young. Could he work himself into being, a possible all-star level caliber player? I mean, yeah, I mean, he could, but also wouldn't you want to bring in a guy who's, I don't know, better than Jack Sawinski and have Jack Sawinski be fighting for the third spot? That to me, that's where it's like, yes, starting pitching is number one at this point in time. I mean, it has to be. And I feel like you said, you could go in a couple different directions. If you get a guy that you think that you could put in to the top of the rotation and you can solidify that, and it's, going out there and spending a little bit more money than we're used to and that it seems like I'm comfortable with to a degree, then that's fine. But then also, I mean, you look at, injuries, you look at regressions, you look at, progressions, are these things going to come together? And for me, it's like, okay, get Keller and get Oviedo and then bring in like four guys and let everybody slug it out. And whoever doesn't make it, like you said, they go to the bullpen. If Paul Skeens has to come up at the beginning of his career and he's not a, guaranteed starter 5 times a week and you have to use him out of the bullpen during his rookie season and you're actually competitive, is that a bad thing? The same thing with like a Jared Jones. Hopefully you hope he fights his way into the rotation. But if he can't even make the rotation and he's still being in the bullpen, which we've seen with, a lot of guys that have come up in their first year, is that really a bad thing?
Look at Grayson Rodriguez from the Orioles. I mean, that's a high-end pitching prospect that was like beginning of the year. Everybody's like, well, it's just a matter of time until he gets here. And when he got up there for that stretch run for that team, he was pitching once every 7 days. Because they were just trying to find time that they could fit him in there. And they were just using him when they felt like it was time to use him because he's young. And because, again, these guys, it's a longer season when they get to Major League Baseball. And they're young, and they're still getting used to putting innings on their arm. You cannot rely on guys that are currently in the minor leagues coming up and giving you 200 innings of high-quality pitching. It doesn't happen. And so you're not blocking anybody by making sure that you have a valid pitching staff. And when I go around the horn on this team, we'll just do a quick exercise here. You look at your catcher position, you got Endy and you got Henry Davis. I would imagine you feel secure in that position, right?
Yeah, and with Delay is probably a backup at some, like I like him as that depth, and
yeah,
I mean, and they'll probably pick up a guy on a minor league deal and stash him in AAA who's a veteran. That's solidified for me. There's no moving on that.
All right, so I move up to first base. Who do you think is going to be the first baseman? You think the
Carlos,
first baseman's even on the team?
I don't think the first baseman's on the team. I mean, we've heard Carlos Santana. I've heard Reese Hoskins, thrown out there as a guy they would like. Brandon Belt. I mean, there's a bunch of different things, some trades to be made, but I don't think that the actual starting first baseman is on this team.
All right, so you need a first baseman. Who do you think is going to be the second baseman?
That's where I kind of go into this is that, I mean, I went into a rant before. I mean, I feel like maybe if they don't get anybody that could be better than those guys immediately, it's going to be a competition of whoever's left if they're not traded between Jared Triolo, Leo Pagero, and Nick Gonzalez. But I still wouldn't mind upgrading that position either.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. Like if I were to look at you and say, you could bring in a 35-year-old Whit Merrifield or Elvis Andrus, you probably wouldn't want them, right? Because they're older. Okay. And then you'd be looking maybe 32-year-old Tony Kemp, and then very, very close on the list, probably if I'm just looking at guys with their wins above replacement over the last couple of years that play second base, we would get to Adam Frazier again. So, I mean, I don't know if you've got a lot of options middle infield to upgrade, so I don't think that you probably go out and do it because you have other things that you need to upgrade. So you
Yeah.
might be working internally at second. Now your shortstop's clearly O'Neal Cruz, right?
Yeah, and that's like
Okay.
a given.
And your third baseman's clearly Cabrian Hayes. And you're not going to go out and upgrade either one of those positions unless you do something really crazy. And like, let's say you go out and you get like Matt Chapman and you say, well, we've got two guys that can play third and they could both move over to first base and let's play some games. But I don't think anything like that is happening. No. So, I mean, so you got your shortstop, your third base, your catcher already solidified, and you're probably not going out and upgrading second base. So when you're infield, it's a first baseman that you need to go out and you need to upgrade for sure. You look out in the outfield, you got Brian Reynolds. And then I think at that point, you need outfielders, right? I mean, you definitely need one, right? And you probably need, you might want to splurge on two. I think you definitely need to add one outfielder to your team. Even if you're a big Jack Sawinski fan, you got to add one more outfielder, right?
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, you have Joshua Palacios and you have Connor Joe, who, I mean, I guess it could be a platoon, but I mean, obviously you want to upgrade that. I mean, that can't be
Right.
the answer. That would be the answer, last year or the year before. That can't be the answer this year.
Okay, so you got to upgrade in the outfield. You got to upgrade first base, and you got to upgrade starting pitching. You definitely need to add two, if not three. That's how I look at this. That's 5 players, right? You got 5 players in a payroll that's sitting about the mid 40 millions right now. If everything goes the way it's supposed to go with arbitration, pre-arbitration, what's currently on the payroll according to Spot Track. And then you got 5 players, all right? And if you went out, you spent $15 million on each one of those players, okay? You'd be a little bit over $100 million payroll. So you probably let's say $10 million on each one of them. $10 million on each one of those positions on average gets you at $90 million for next year.
Which is kind of crazy to imagine. I mean, it's payroll flexibility. I mean, you've said it, and
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that I'm just saying, and not every position is going to cost you $10 million, right? You could probably find the outfielder you need for 7 or 8. That's probably, you could probably find you could probably have your low end starting pitcher at $8 million. I don't want to say like I'm trying to think of guys that got signed to 1 year prove it deals last year. Mike Clevenger, who I brought up, is still stuck in my mind. I think he was $8 million last year, right? For a back end rotation spot. So you don't have to spend $10 million on each one of them. If you just average $10 million on all of them, that's where you would end up with your payroll. And if you could pull off a trade with some of the depth that you have with minor league positions, you could actually reduce that cost as well. So I don't think it's unreasonable if the Pirates are legit interested in becoming a real Major League Baseball team again, for them to go out and take care of those 5 positions. And to be able to add at those positions and to be able to add quality at those positions and go out and win. It just depends on whether or not their owner is going to continue to be cheap. And whether or not that's really it. Is the owner going to be cheap? And if the owner is going to continue to be cheap, then you got to start dealing some of your prospects that you may have fallen in love with, Craig, to be able to fill those positions. Because you got 5 easily that you need to go fill this offseason. First base, outfield, 3 pitchers. I haven't even looked at the bullpen yet because I don't really care about bullpens.
Yeah, and for some reason, I feel like Pirates fans, I mean, just on and off note here, or I guess sidebar, Pirates fans love bullpens. They do. Like every single year, it's like, well, we've got David Bednar, and we've got, Carmen Majinski, and we've got Colin Holderman, and we've got Dowry Moretta, and we've got all this. And then, I mean, miraculously, like within a couple years, it's like, well, we got this guy and we got this. They're always changing.
Don't even worry about bullpens. Don't even worry about bullpens. If you're competing, I'm going to tell you, this is my prediction. This is my crazy out of left field tinfoil hat prediction for the Pirates. The Pirates go out and they fill those 5 positions. They come out, they start winning baseball games. They're halfway through the year, and suddenly, coming off of all of his Tommy John and ready to start pitching again, the comeback player of the year this year, who already fought off cancer, comes off of Tommy John, is available to start pitching in like August, and you've got payroll available, and you go sign for a couple of months Liam Hendricks at the back end of your bullpen. Would that fix everything? Would that fix everything for you? Would you be okay with your bullpen at that point? Just add him in?
I mean, I mean, I would be excited.
Because you're competing. Because you're competing,
you're
and then you
competing.
can get a guy
Yeah.
like that who's actually being paid this year because of the opt out that he had, and the money wouldn't matter. He just want to go someplace and win, and he would be available most likely because I don't know who's signing him to not even be available until August. So he probably just rehabs for a while and then shows up halfway through the year.
Yeah, and the crazy part is people that praise bullpens during the off seasons. I mean, don't they realize that the most needed things at, the trade deadline and one of the things that, bring back the most prospects and whatever it would be is bullpen arms, because that's what people need. They need starting pitching and bullpen arms to
Right.
get them through the season, get them through whatever. So even if this is the bullpen that starts the beginning of the year,
You can
I
buy
mean, at some
bullpen.
point in time, you
Right.
get that towards the end of that. And sometimes you're getting it for, what would be like your higher valued prospects, but maybe are lower down in the system.
Well, and
I
also
mean, we
think
did
about it
that
this
for
way.
years.
Think about it this way. Your starting pitchers can, if you have depth in starting pitching or some of these young guys come along, that will bolster your bullpen as the year goes on. And when you go to the postseason, I want to say that the Diamondbacks basically used 3 starting pitchers and moved everybody else into the bullpen, right? Like their bullpen was a bunch of guys who were starters, who now only had to worry about going through the order one time. And look at the run that they made when they did it, because they have so much young starting pitching that they moved a lot of them that were starting pitchers into bullpen roles when it came time to make their postseason run when they were finally in the playoffs. So you don't need to fill every bullpen role. You really don't. That's not how baseball works anymore. Have good starting pitching, be solid around the on the field, be really solid up the middle, okay? And then as the season progresses, a team like the Pirates that has so much depth in their minor league system and so many young players that people are going to be sitting there saying, well, I'll take this guy, I'll take that guy. You could pick up an arm. And then if you make it into the postseason, now you rotate some of those young arms that you saw come along in the back half of the year that finally made it up here. They rotate into the bullpen. Or one of those starting pitchers you picked up, he loses his spot in the rotation because somebody really proved themselves, and that guy rotates into the bullpen. Bullpens don't bother me at all. You got 5 positions you got to fix. 3 starters, a first baseman, and an outfielder. You do that, this is a playoff team.
Yeah, bullpens don't bother me, and neither do any of the waiver things that the Pirates did, which we didn't even get to because guess what? It's not like we really lost anybody.
No, you didn't. I'm telling you, man. Look, it's right there. Years of pain and waiting to see what happens. It's right there. It's all about now whether or not they'll spend some money and make the move.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one